Have you ever felt like your team just doesn't get it? You thought you set expectations, but then the blame game starts and everything falls apart. Well, it's time to flip the script and master accountability. Here's how. Let's dig in right now. So stop blaming others and lead your business to victory. Today, we're going to dig into how to master accountability and take ownership. And without further ado, what is accountability? So it's got to have grit. You got to have the grit. So if you got the grit, this one's for you. Accountability is the quality or state of being responsible to one's obligations, which essentially means it is the glue between a commitment or a goal and a result, right? So it has to be us. So when we look at, we become the ones to hold them accountable, which is where we want to dig in. But it's the glue between a commitment and a result. So here's what that looks like, right? You have commitments or agreements that you make with your team, and then you have results that they need to get. The accountability is what takes it from the commitment or the goal or the KPI and gets it to the actual result that we're trying to achieve, which is, maybe a KPI, a measurement, a goal that we're trying to hit. Maybe it's a number, whatever the commitment is, that the goal is that for that person, that team member, you're holding them accountable and taking accountability yourself is what's going to get you to the result of that goal that you're looking for. So my goal here is to operationalize accountability for you. So what is it? So it is holding someone accountable, which means reinforcing them for the actions and the results that they produce and that you expect of them. So in order to do that, we need to figure out what does winning look like and what does losing look like and what does it take to win and what will happen if we lose, right? So what I'm saying is, you, leader, your number one job as a leader is to reinforce how they are doing in relation, so like comparing and contrasting to how they're expected to be doing, right? So if I expect you to run a service call in under 2 hours, but it takes you at least 2.5 to 3 hours, what are we doing to reinforce when you do that? Well, and what are you doing to reinforce when you fail on that? How are we providing constructive feedback? We're going to talk about all of that. As leaders, we need to spend our time and invest our time and our money into the number one most valuable asset of our company and of our leadership, which is our team. We have to invest in our team because without them, we have no business. So as the leader, you are the chief accountability officer. Stop thinking CEO, start thinking CAO. And this is what it means, is that you're the chief accountability officer. It is your job to hold everyone accountable, right, on the team. So in order to do that, you first need to point the thumb, not the finger. So you are in charge. You are the leader. It's on you. So let's talk about what is absolute accountability and how do you take absolute accountability. So it's one of the first things that I talk to about all of my owners and operators, all of my middle management, anyone who's a leader, essentially, COOs, general managers, anything like that, especially in the service businesses. So absolute accountability. You must commit, own, and be accountable to everything and everyone in your world, whole world, that affects the mission. So all wins, all losses, all problems, and all solutions, right? You're going to need to lead up, lead down, and lead across the chain of command, right? You need to be accountable to three things. First, yourself, then the mission, and then the team. Now, there's, a dichotomy between all three of those. There's a balance that we have to strike in all three of those. That's for a whole nother video. But those are the three things that you need to be accountable to: yourself, your mission, and the team. So it's on you. You need to take accountability, right? Pull the thread. And I bet you that thread, if I pulled it off my shirt right now, would end at your leadership, right? So how are you affecting, right, the mission, the team, and the business and your leaders? Okay. That is on you. It's not about you, but it is on you. Okay. So you're the new chief accountability officer. The first thing you need to do is point the thumb, not the finger. and take accountability. So anything that is bad happening, any problem that you have going on with operations, with communication, with team performance, right, with setting expectations, it's your fault. So take accountability of it. Here's the good news is because it's your fault and because you're taking accountability of it, you get to fix it, which is my favorite part. And this is one of the ways that we're going to fix it right here. So here's the framework for accountability. So expectations plus measurement times reinforcement equals accountability. Now, and we'll got each of these symbols and we'll build throughout this presentation and throughout this video. But the key is this: first, expectations, and then plus, this one is a plus, measurement. So what is expected of them? And then how are they being measured in what's expected of them? And then times multiplication there, and we'll dig into why here in a minute. How is that being reinforced positively? All three of those things equal accountability, right? So you got the expectation, you got the measurement, and then you have the reinforcement of the expectation and the measurement. Put all that together equals accountability. Here's how to rock it out in your business. Let's break down each one of these as we move forward here. So how to set expectations. So an expectation is the instructions that you give somebody. It's the standard you set, okay? Whether it be quality of work, whether it be time, whether it be deadlines, whether it be how they dress, how clean they keep their trucks. All of these different things can be expectations, right? And we'll lay out what some different expectations are. So you have macro expectations and then micro expectations, right? So macro expectations are more like organizational for the company and for the team. So here's some examples of macro expectations. And then how well do your people know them? So the vision, the mission, and the values, okay? So in particularly, vision, mission can be pretty interchangeable. I use the word mission because it's more tactical thinking. And I operate that way. It's more action-based than theoretical. So the mission, what is the mission of the company? What are we set out to do? And then what are the values of the company of how are we going to achieve the mission, right? How are we going to behave on our way to achieve the mission? Does everyone know that? And are they held accountable to that? Or do they get constructive feedback on how bought into the mission they are and how their actions and what they do on a daily basis is attached to that mission? And then are they reinforced to uphold the values and to live out the values, right? Is their behavior show what the values of the business are? Do they even know what the values are? Should be 3 to 5 of them. 3 to 5 values is all you need. You don't need any less than 3 or any more than 5. That's too many. No one will remember them. My favorite is 3 because the human brain remembers things in 3. So a simple mission and then the values. Those are your macro expectations that apply to everyone in the company, everyone on the team, including you. It's your job to set those, though, and to make sure that everyone knows them, and then to make sure they're being measured on them, right? So you set the expectation, and then we're going to talk about measurement next, but you need to also reinforce them. We're going to talk about implementation too. So those are macro expectations, is the mission and the values. Micro expectations are more for the individual and for the role, okay? So what we're talking about here is like a department mission. If we have something that takes the big mission, breaks it down for that specific department. Another thing could be like the POA worksheet, primary outcome area worksheet, which that could be a whole nother video itself. But it's basically, what are your top priorities? What are your key result areas? What does winning look like? And what is it going to take to win? And then are there any other expectations? Who do you report to? Who reports to you? Who's your upline? Is there anything that you should not be touching that's not in your lane? It's a fancy way of saying job description, but it's a much more simplified, functional, tactical way of putting together a job description. That's an amazing one. We do the POA worksheets all the time. It's probably the number one way that we set micro expectations. Other micro expectations are like SOP, standard operating procedures or processes or playbooks or a project outline or a deadline or a checklist. All those types of things that we usually lump and call playbooks. Those are great micro expectations that they follow those, that they adhere to them, that we meet deadlines, and we follow SOPs and we use checklists as well. And then KPIs, like everyone in your team, every role should be responsible for at least one number that they're looking to hit as a goal, or they're looking to always be improving, or both, right? So it's like, does everyone on your team have a number, have a KPI, a measurement essentially, that they're trying to either achieve or improve on all of the time? So those are micro expectations. So an expectation is the standard you set. It's the instructions that you give somebody, and there's macro ones and there's micro ones. We just broke both of those down for you. Now let's dig into, how do we measure this, okay? How do we measure what we've expected? So measurement is, how do we know that they are doing or not doing the expectations? Okay, so essentially it's to what degree are they following the instructions given and the standard that was set. So here's some ways that we can measure, right? Did they meet the deadline or not? Are they on the leaderboard? And if they're on the leaderboard, in what order are they on the leaderboard or not? Which leaderboards are a great way to measure and to create a little bit of buzz in the company, and to keep your people competing with each other as well. Like, competition breeds success. KPIs, are they hitting their KPIs? Key performance indicator, are they improving the numbers they're supposed to be improving? You can also take surveys, right? Feedback surveys to get a constant feedback loop. You can observe. And my favorite here are performance reviews. And I see my face is in the way there, but that's performance reviews. And then I use the POA worksheet on, and I just use a traffic light, like red, yellow, green. How are they doing? And if it's anything other than green, there's an action plan of how to get that better in yellow. And then if it's red, it's like, what are we doing today to get this fixed ASAP? And then my favorite way to measure is self-assessment. It is the most powerful tool. So what you do is you just create a really simple self-assessment of like 1 to 10, and you rank it and have them rank it. And then you also rank it, have them show you their ranking first. And then you compare and contrast your ranking, and you build an action plan out of that. If you don't build an action plan, it's just a bunch of lip service. Okay. So you have to have an action plan of like, based on this assessment, what you're going to do is A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, X, Y, Z, right? Probably only 2 or 3 things that they're going to move forward on, but you have to measure them regularly. Okay. This is like at least once a month, people are being measured, and they know they're being measured up to their expectation. Okay. And that's going to lead us right into the next piece, which is reinforcement. So how do we reinforce? So reinforcement is what you do after you receive the measurement of the expectation. So we always want to think praise over punishment. Positive reinforcement is going to be much, much stronger than negative punishment. So think more carrot than stick. Okay. Now, sometimes the stick's going to come, but we'll talk about how to do that, how to give that constructive feedback that is a collaborative environment that's built for continuous improvement, not just negative punishment. So high reinforcement equals high accountability. What does this mean? Okay, so we have to reinforce. We have to think like every little bit counts, right? So everything is a reinforcement. Whether you're doing nothing, that's reinforcing you don't care about the expectation or the measurement, or whether you're talking about it all the time. So we're saying high reinforcement equals high accountability. So we want to do it all the time in multiple different ways. The first way is with meetings, right? So we have one-on-one meetings, we have small group meetings, we have large group meetings. So we have one-on-one, like weekly one-on-one meetings with their leader. You pull out that POA worksheet, red, yellow, green traffic light. Here's how they're doing. You have them self-assess on the macro ones of the mission and the values and how they're upholding them and living those out every single day in the company. Then you can do it as like a team. Like you can go to a department to do a small group and have it more at a kind of a medium level type that. And then also the large group as a whole. You could put out a survey. You could do a self-assessment. I just use a simple Google form in order to do that. Another way other than meetings that I like to do is end of week reports or end of month reports or every other week. Like, doesn't really matter as long as they're regular. You ask just a handful of open-ended questions about behavior, activity, and performance and get some open feedback on that. But what you're doing is reinforcing what is expected and how they're being measured, right? Another type of reinforcement you can do: team surveys, feedback exercises. One of the things that works really well for one of our companies is we call them Feedback Fridays. And essentially we just ask and we give feedback. right? So I'm going to give feedback to you. You give feedback to me. Feedback Fridays. It was already set. It was the expectation, right? And then recognition and reward. And this is every little bit, right? This is a high five. This is a virtual fist bump. This is donuts on a Friday, like my dad used to do. If you live in Michigan near Flint, there's Donna's Donuts. We used to do Donna's Donuts Fridays, which was a great reinforcer. If they hit a certain thing, he got donuts for him every single Friday. And then the informal quick hits, right? Like the gas card or the high five or the water cooler or the, hey, leave 10 minutes early or take next Friday off. Like the informal stuff is more important and gives you latency. That means there can't be real spread out. It needs to be random. All right. And they need to be recognized in public, and they need to be rewarded both in public and in private, recognized and rewarded. But make sure it's random, but make sure that happens often. When something does something right, you need to reinforce the behavior that you want in your team and in your company. So when they hit an expectation and the measurement is good, you need to reward and recognize that randomly and a lot. Okay. Make sure that latency isn't too long. So let's put all this together in a sports example, right? So I'm a football guy. Obviously, I played at Saginaw Valley State University. I played at Eastern Michigan University. So Division I college football, I was an offensive lineman. I was a center. Here you go. Here is an offensive execution football sports example of how to do accountability well. So the expectation for the offense is that our coach set the expectation that we rushed for over 100 yards per game. Very simple expectation laid out for the whole year, every single game, at least 100 yards. How are we being measured? Well, lots of ways. We measure everything in football, but basically we tracked our performance by recording the rushing yards every single game, as well as our run blocking percentage as an offensive line, individually and as a team. And then as well as we measured the yards per carry as well, because the running back played a role in that as well. So we knew what the expectation was. We knew exactly how we were being measured. And now let's talk about how did our coach reinforce that? So the coach, they gave us real-time feedback, right? After every drill in practice, they praised us, obviously, and told us what we did right when it went well. And then when it didn't go well, they corrected us, coached us, and we trained it. We drilled on the technique on the spot. And then also after practices and after games, right, we would watch film, we would review it, we would get the highlights of when we did well and what we did well and why. And then as well as when we missed blocks, we would get that targeted feedback and walk through that one-on-one coaching and training in order to even set specific improvement goals moving forward. And then if we hit our 100 yards rushing, we would get a steak dinner every single time. Everybody on the team will get a steak dinner that week if we hit our 100 yards rushing. So that was the reinforcement, right? So it was just a constant loop of amazing accountability because the expectation was clear. We knew exactly how we were being measured, and we knew exactly how to get the reward, and we were being recognized and also getting that constructive feedback and coaching nonstop over and over. Let's take that into, well, what happened? Well, actually that year we ended up getting 137 rushing yards per game. My boy, Brandon Amiot, if you're out there, we would carry him from play to play. He was so tired from running the ball so much because we loved that we had a blast. This was at Saginaw Valley. But basically, here's what happened is the players, we were able to stay focused. We attacked the goal. We knew that we were being measured and we were being reinforced, which makes you feel good when you achieve it and makes you want to achieve it and get better when you're failing at it. Basically, it's like we knew that if we did well, there would be praise. And if we made mistakes or underperformed, there would be constructive feedback and coaching to help us to achieve the goal, right? So that's sports. And it's the same exact thing in business. Now but before we dive into that business example, all of this is about communication, right? We talked about meetings in here as one of the ways to set expectations, to provide measurement, and to reinforce them. Meetings are a huge part of accountability. So I want to give you a gift, our free guide. You go ahead and download it now, MaynerLeadership.com/4meetings. This is the 4 meetings that you need to grow a home service company. It has everything in there, the agendas, the structures, the meeting planner. There's a POA worksheet that we talked about in this. There's a performance review worksheet. Like there's so many tools in here. It's absolutely amazing. But if you're like, hey, I want meetings that make money, These are the 4 meetings that make you money and to help to hold your team accountable. Now let's dig into the business example of this. So the business example, I chose one of my HVAC businesses that I work with, and we were honing in on them on job completion time. So here's what we did. We set the expectation. I was working with the owner operator as well as a bunch of the techs. We set the expectation for the service techs to complete a standard repair in under 2 hours. So that was the expectation. That was our focus for, I believe we did that for a quarter. And then so it was like, that's the goal. That's the expectation. How are we going to measure you? So the measurement was, we're just going to track every single job, right? Every standard HVAC repair job, which we just classified the type of job, and compare it to the actual time to the expected time, right? So it was expected to be under 2 hours. What did you actually do? And then we logged the results daily. And then the reinforcement, we talked about it daily, right? So weekly meetings, team meetings, one-on-one meetings, we shared the reports with each tech, right? Individually and private and also publicly. And we created a leaderboard to know who was the fastest that also kept up the same quality. So really we wanted effectiveness and efficiency. We wanted it to be good and to be fast, which is the key and the secret to business, obviously. So we reinforced and rewarded, as well as recognized the leaders. And then we provided that individual support and coaching and constructive feedback as well. So if someone was struggling, they got that one-on-one coaching so that how they could get better. Let's talk about what happened. So after 1 quarter, it was 1 hour and 49 minutes. So it was 11 minutes under our expectation. So we met our goal and then exceeded it. Basically, what happened was the techs knew exactly what was expected, right? Fast and good. And we trained them in how to do that. They knew how they were going to be measured. They understood that they were being measured, and it was going to be talked about constantly because they got consistent, positive, and constructive feedback, as well as the coaching that they needed. And over time, job completion times improved as the accountability strengthened. So here's what you do. You need to hit that subscribe button, smash it, hit like, give us a comment. What was your biggest takeaway, your insight moment, your power moment? And then, hey, if this is something that you want to see come in your box every other week, then make sure you hit that notify button before we go and share it with another entrepreneur, service business leader that's in the trenches. And before we go, here's your 3 steps to better accountability. I always give an action plan before we head out. So step number 1 is set the expectation with your team. Make sure that everyone knows what the mission and the values are on a macro level, and then dig into that POA worksheet, that role clarity worksheet, to know what are the 3 key result areas. What does winning look like? What will it take to win? Make sure everybody knows that, and that's what they're being measured on. And then create a self-assessment tool so that they can measure themselves as well as you can measure them on their performance of what is expected of them. Okay, that's number 2. And then number 3 is to reinforce the positive behavior that is in alignment with the expectation, and that you're giving regular feedback if something is not in alignment. So if someone is underperforming, you're giving the coaching and the feedback. If someone is doing well, you're reinforcing that in formal and informal ways as consistently as possible. And that is your 3 steps to better accountability. If you do this, you will master accountability. You will improve team performance. You will increase morale, and your team and your business will be better than ever. I can promise you that.